We are back for the second community Q&A in the forum, and we will be answering questions that you guys have submitted. Max, anything before we begin?
They better be good questions.
They better be good. So Weightlifting V, I believe this is Vince, asks, how long should we stick with one jerk type, and when should we incorporate other varieties? And he gives a brief background. I'm mostly split jerk, but I have some shoulder issues and push jerk when they flare up. I'm a terrible jerker overall, with his snatch about 85% of his split jerk. And he's tempted to try a training cycle with just power and squat jerks.
So this is a common situation. When you're not good at split jerking, you search the world for the solution, which is to do everything that isn't a split jerk. For one, your situation, if you've got shoulder pain when you jerk or there's some kind of shoulder issue, you got to resolve that, because that's a problem that will eventually start to happen on power jerks and squat jerks. Your snatch to jerk ratio is not that bad, right? That's within, a small margin of what ideal would be. So I would not say you're terrible at jerks, but you can definitely improve that. So the biggest thing I would say is, rather than looking at when or how long you should do any one of these things, look at how do you improve your split jerk and what are the things you need to work on. If it's technique stuff, put more drills in, work more drills, practice the technique more, have more intent with the technique you're working on. If it's a strength or issue there, then the AI will eventually start to program more strength exercises to bring up that weakness. If your push press and power jerk are radically different than your split jerk, then those need to be emphasized. One thing you could do right off the bat, right away, is when you have jerks in the program or cleans with multiple jerks, add a few extra sets to your sessions and try to build up the volume of that practice.
Yeah, and Max, I actually had a coaching call today with someone who signed up for the mentorship, and he was asking about how to teach the split jerk, what drills you would use to help teach, reinforce, and get people using the proper mechanics. So you mentioned to Vince, hey, maybe you do more specific split jerk work. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I would say, look at it, is it a footwork thing or a coordination thing? One of my favorite, and I know Joanne loves it, is like a stepping jerk balance, which is basically just breaking down the jerk into its pieces, but emphasizing each component in a slow pace, one step at a time. So you'd dip and drive, then you'd plant your back foot down on the ground first, then land your front foot and lock your arms at the same time. Do that sequence in slow motion, one step at a time, and then slowly reduce the time between those steps to the point that you have the rhythm and tempo of a back foot sliding back and landing first, front foot coming down with the arms locking at the same time. That's a really good drill, I think, just in general to do. Other things would be like a press from the split, push press from split, jerk from split. Those drills are all just basically like refinement drills to kind of work on what it's like to be in the split position and timing. And then, if there's more that you need to do, there's plenty of more drills. So that's probably too many to list here, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the stepping jerk balance would be a good exercise for us to pop up into the community. It's like a great drill to work on before you start your clean and jerks, just so you're ready to execute the proper movement. And that's part of my teaching progression, is just a simple slide and step drill. Pretty much your hands are on your hips, you dip, drive, stay on your toes, slide your back foot. Once that's in place, you step your front foot out. And then, the stepping jerk balance is almost just the evolution of that with a barbell. So maybe we'll put that up in the community. Look for that if you have a problem with your jerk or want something to help prime the movement before you clean and jerk. Now, Seb actually asks, Seb Ostrovich?
Ostrovich, yeah.
Ostrovich.
That's how he claims it's pronounced.
Yeah, he's Russian.
Yeah. Polish.
Yeah. It's even worse. So Seb asks, what are Max's goals with his own training? Is it numbers he's after, frequency of training, or enjoyment?
I'm just literally doing more than Seb does. That's my goal. No, I started training again a little more intently because the opportunity came up. So probably it's enjoyment. It's like having people to train with is fun, and having something consistent to train for. I got out of powerlifting and mostly because it just wasn't really enjoyable anymore. And never really got back into it because I didn't have goals, you know, so it wasn't that exciting. But I guess I'd say the short term is just staying healthy and enjoying it, and then maybe long term would be trying to get somewhere back to where I was, you know, close to where I was, maybe 275 squat or something.
Yeah, so for people who are newer to Weightlifting House, Weightlifting.AI, or Max Aita, what were your best numbers when you powerlifted?
My best squat was 335 kilos, best bench was 160, and my deadlift was 320.
Yeah,
so.
At 335, I don't think I knew about that.
Oh, really?
That's staggering, no.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 310, 320.
No.
I didn't know you actually squatted 700 pounds.
Yeah, well over 7.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that and $1.50 will buy you a cup of coffee.
Awesome. And then the next question is from Stephen D.Armstrong. Stephen, well, he demands, and then he asks, all about the turnover, getting under it like a boss. How do?
You got to use your upper body to get under the bar.
Yeah.
Right? The biggest thing I think most people struggle with is that they try to pull the bar as high as possible, and they emphasize everything in one movement direction, and then they, as an afterthought, I'll just kind of drop down and catch the bar. There's got to be a concerted effort to move under the bar, you know, immediately after the most explosive and powerful finish you can deliver. So it's kind of akin to like a drag race, going as fast as you can in one direction. As soon as you hit the finish line, you got to put the brakes on and go back the other direction as fast as possible. The better you're able to coordinate the end movement, that the actual turnover of the lift, you know, from pulling to actually moving under, the faster you're going to go into the bar. We know that advanced lifters are not pulling the bar as high relative to their own height as beginner lifters. So that indicates to us that generally moving under the bar quickly is super important. I would say drills and stuff, hip snatch or power position snatch, great exercise for that. It's a great primer to warm up with. Anything that shortens the pull, so hang snatch and block snatches also emphasize this. And then just in general, working on that rhythm and timing so you're not pulling forever and then easy under the bar. You have a nice coordinated movement where you maybe apply just the right amount of force to the pull, don't overdo it, and then emphasize the speed on the bar a little bit more in your warm-ups.
Yeah, and I would say, kind of to go along with what Max said, I think conceptually, I think of the snatch as one very long movement from the floor to standing up, right? So the gap in between is one continuous motion versus getting the bar to the hip, extending, receiving it, and then standing up. I think of it as, you know, once you initiate the pull off the floor, it's one very long pull and then finishing with the bar overhead. So if you can conceptually try to extend it, I think it helps you follow through off the hip a little bit better. Ways I would address this is kind of in a teaching progression, using muscle snatches from the hip, using power position snatches, you know, power snatch from the power position, full snatch from the power position. And then also, again, another exercise I've really liked is the panda pull. Just being able to go off the hip, move the elbows high, and pull the hips straight down. I think that's like part of coordinating the proper motion. Some people kind of dive the chest, and it can kind of cut the pull a little bit. So I'd say you warm up with something like some sort of deadlift to the hip, panda pull plus hip power snatch, hip snatch, or, you know, some iteration thereof. All you're looking to do is get your elbows kind of as high as possible when you're going under the barbell, and making sure when you turn it over, it's like this smooth connection and then a tight receive. Yeah. Cool. Dylan, he was in our most recent Weightlifting House PR reel that went up, so congrats, Dylan. He says, how will the community scale given the limited capacity of Josh, Seb, and Max? I heard gene doping is pretty simple.
I mean, ideally the community is a place not just for us to give information.
Right.
What we're trying to do is create an educational platform so that people can learn from each other. Obviously, we don't want a situation where, you know, lots of people are giving inexperienced advice, but the goal here is to create something where the more experienced lifters are invited to help out with advice about technique and basic stuff with newer lifters as they come in. Us obviously trying to curate and produce and deliver as much content as we can that's helpful will facilitate that, but our goal is to create a community that can help coach each other, because a lot of times the technical aspects of the lifts they're not necessarily something that can't be taught. right? There's a lot of new coaches need to come up at all times. So our goal with the community is to make it more of an encompassing thing, and hopefully as it grows, we'll get more better lifters to come in and more experienced people that can kind of help, lead the newer people along.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's getting everyone to contribute. I'm sure everyone's thought of the lift slightly differently or had some value to add that's slightly different. I think getting people to do that, getting people to ask questions, getting people to just create conversation so that we can flesh out topics and provide as much value as possible. And then, as this grows, like you said, you bring in more people, you can provide, a broader service, and you can equip more people with the resources to be better coaches and athletes. So, cooperokiehomie, I think that's right.
That's his birth name.
It's his first name, yeah. He says, amongst Max, Seb, and Josh, which lifters have or had you started, and how far have they progressed to this point, along with their level of potential to compete at nationals or international meets? Signed, Coop.
What's the question?
So, which lifters have you developed? How far have they gotten? And then what was their potential?
That's a long list. I guess I could list off a few of the top people I've coached. I've had 5 individual American record holders in weightlifting, 1 Pan Am record holder, Pan Am champion, multiple, I don't even know how many national champions, probably about a dozen, maybe less than 12. I don't even know the number of American Open medalists and champions. And then probably, I think I had 1 girl who had potential to be Olympian, who was there, Alyssa Ritchie for sure, but couldn't quite get there. Yeah. I guess that sums up. That sums up the last 20 years of my life.
Right. Anything I would say pales in comparison to that, so I'll just let Max answer that, and then Seb and I will sit this one out. Our last question from longtime Weightlifting House fan and contributor, sammy.christo. Sam says, currently I have a solid 12-week chunk to get this training cycle in on the AI, but I'm wondering when it all comes to competition, will the AI be able to taper me, or should I do my own thing? Loving the programming so far.
Yeah, so the tapering and peaking is something that we've definitely been working on. Like V2, version 2 of that will be excellent. The AI will be able to do peaking fine for you, no problem.
Yeah, and a question we did get in the community, it was actually, should I take the attempts that are suggested and then stop if I'm just maxing out after a program, or should I push to a max?
Yeah, that's up to you. I would say if it's not a competition, you probably have a hard time getting a 4th and 5th attempt at a meet, but if you feel you've got more, then yeah, for sure go above that. Yeah. Max out sessions, like in my opinion, it's okay to go until you miss a couple times, right? You don't have to be super tight and controlled, say, it's just 3 lifts. I would say if you're missed a lift, if you're missing and the lift's not getting better or closer, then probably time to stop and just move on. But yeah, for sure, feel free to push it, especially if you're not competing.
Yeah, if you're not competing, I think what the test session is ultimately it's a way to gauge where you're at for the next block.
Yeah.
It's a way to gauge how much progress you've made. So if you're calling it early because you feel like you've taken your attempts, but you obviously have room in the tank, I think you're just kind of holding yourself back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I would push, like Max said, until you maybe miss once or twice, or the lifts just the misses start to get so ragged that you really have no shot. And then you can update, the program, and you can sure things up and then get after it again.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was all the questions we had for this community Q&A. We'll post another thread shortly, and hopefully you guys enjoy this one and get a lot out of it.
Yeah, those are good questions.
Great questions.
Good, you're lucky. I would have shut this down.